Alright, I'm Umair back with another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about React hooks. So React hooks are released in React version 16.8 or later versions. So what is React hooks? Actually, in old version of React, we used to use classes and we used to define a state object that was containing all the data. But in React hooks, we can't actually use the classes. Instead, React hooks introduced function based components, and there is something called use state that is used to control the state of the data. So let's get started, and I'm gonna create a simple CRUD app that's gonna list all the nodes, delete the nodes, and add a new node on our web app. So I have opened up VS Code and I'm gonna create a new project. If you have installed latest create React app package, it will install a React project with the React hooks configured. So I'm going to use npx create React app and I'm going to name it nodes. So it's going to download and install all the packages required to run the React project. So let's wait for it. So now it has installed all the packages for this React project, and if I go to package.json, you can see it has installed React, React DOM, and React script. So I'm gonna go and open up source folder and open up app.js, and you can see this is all code. There is no class, it is just a function, and within this function it is just returning this HTML. All right, and we can't actually use the state just like we were using in the class based component. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let me just run it, and let me write ls, and it is nodes. Let me just enter the nodes, and I'm going to run npm run start. So it's going to compile this project, and it's going to run it in my browser. So let me open up localhost 3000, and this is the default project. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I just need to remove this header, and I'm going to use a component for showing the list of all nodes. I'm going to create a separate component. First of all, I'm going to remove this logo from here. Let me save this file. I'm going to remove this logo file from here as well, and I'm going to open up app CSS, and I'm going to remove app logo styles, app link, keyframes, just remove it. So we only have this particular CSS over here. So I'm going to create nodes, and I'm going to write border radius, which is 4 pixels, padding 6 pixels, and I'm gonna give it max width, which is, let's say, 400 pixels. All right, and this is the class I'm gonna be using within this app class name. So now I'm gonna create another div, and I'm gonna give it a class name. I'm gonna give it nodes. So inside this div, I'm going to use a component called nodes that will be responsible for showing the list of all the nodes. So within the source folder, I'm going to create a new folder, which is components. Within this folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to name it nodes.js. And I'm just going to copy it from here, and I'm going to paste it over here, and I'm going to change few names. So I'm going to change it nodes, and I'm going to export default nodes, and let me just remove the outer div because we don't need it. All right, and I'm going to use the same file for the CSS styling, but it is in the parent folder. So I'm just going to write another dot. All right, so I'm going to save this file. Now within the app.js file, I'm going to create the data. So for creating the data, I'm going to use the state. It will be different from the traditional class-based React components. So I'm going to write React. Actually, we can use it over here. So I'm going to use the curly braces, use state. Okay, so within this app function, I'm going to create a constant and I'm going to write notes, set notes, and I'm going to write use state. So this is an array. We can have an object, we can have a simple constant value. So I'm going to create array of objects and each object will gonna be represent one node. So I'm going to create an object. First of all, we're going to add an ID node. This is my first node and important, and this variable will be used to color our node. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it 3 more times. Change the ID. This is the third one. This is the second one. Okay, so use state actually return 2 things, and we are actually storing the return response within these 2 variables. The first variable is going to be storing whole data, and second variable will be responsible to make any changes within this data. If we want to delete some data, if we want to make any changes within the properties, or if we want to edit or add a new object of nodes within this array, we can use this variable. All right, so the data has been added. Now I'm going to use this particular component nodes and I'm going to import it in my app.js file. So import, and I'm going to write nodes from components slash nodes. So it has been imported. Now within this div, I'm going to use that particular component. So nodes, and I'm going to send this data, this particular whole data, and this data is being stored within this nodes variable. So rather than using this .state.nodes that we were using in the previous React class-based components, we are just going to write nodes. So nodes, I'm going to write nodes and nodes. So it has called that particular nodes component and it has sent this nodes data. Now what I'm going to do is, first of all, open up, make sure you save all these files, and I'm going to receive that particular data. So to receive it, I'm going to use curly braces, and this is how we can receive this particular data. All right, and inside it, I'm going to be iterating through each of the node objects. So within this curly braces, I'm going to write nodes dot map. I'm going to write node index, and inside it, I'm going to create another component that is going to represent a single node object. So within this component, I'm going to create a new file which is node.js. So I'm just going to copy everything from here and paste it over here, and I'm going to change it from nodes to node. All right. So inside it, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to remove it, and I'm just going to use this particular node object that is coming from this component, and I'm going to show it over here. So node.node, but we need to send it from our parent component. So let's go back to our nodes component, and inside it, I'm going to import that node component and import node from node. So inside it, let's use node. And while we are using map, we need to use a key to assign each index. So key index. If you remember, we used to do same thing in our class-based React components. So node, this is how we are going to send the node. Also, if we intend to delete that particular node, we need to return a particular index, but from here we need to pass that index that is coming from this index. So I'm going to pass the index. All right, so now this particular node is being called. Now let's go back and so now let's style it a bit. And rather than actually using the nodes, I'm going to create another class called node, and inside it I'm just going to add a background, and which would be white, box shadow 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 1 pixel, and I just need to add RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0. All right, and I just need to add some padding, so 3 pixels. Font size 12 pixels. Margin bottom 6 pixels. Display flex, and justify content, I'm just going to give it space between. All right, so let's save all these files. Make sure you added this note over here. So it has been added. Let me just go over here and see if this is being applied or not. So now what I'm gonna do is first of all I just need to show a button that is going to delete this particular node. But before that, let me use this particular property important, and according to this property I'm going to change the color of it. So in React we can actually directly use the styles, and within the double curly braces I can use background color, and I'm going to check if node.important is true, then I'm going to use one color, otherwise the second color. So for it I'm going to use a color FFB7B7. Okay, and for if it is not true, I'm going to use B7FFB. All right, so now you can see that this is my first node. Let me just go to app, and I'm just going to make it false. So this is green now. Let me just zoom in a bit. So this is green, this is red. So if it is important, I'm using red. If it is not important, then I'm using green. All right, so now let me add a delete button. I'm going to add a cross button over here. So for that, let me just come over here, and inside it I'm just going to add a button on click, and I'm going to call a function which I'm going to create within this particular component. So delete note item. All right, and I'm just going to add a X character. Okay, so this is the function, just copy it, and I'm going to use a constant function E arrow function, and I'm just going to use the prevent default. So default a functionality of the button, I don't want to use it. Instead, I want to ignore the default property and proceed further to the next lines. And in this case, I'm just going to call the delete node function that is coming from the parent parent component. This is nodes. Okay, so first of all, I just need to pass this delete. Let's come back to app.js, and inside it I'm going to pass the delete function. So delete node equals to delete node. This is the function which doesn't exist here as of now, so I'm going to create an empty function for now. So delete node, and it is going to take an index that which node we want to delete. So it exists now. So now this is being passed, the reference of this function is being passed to these nodes, and I'm going to receive it just like I received this nodes object. Okay, so delete node, and I have received it. Now I need to pass this particular delete node, actually it's reference to the node component. So delete node, delete node. So it has been passed. Now within this node I need to receive index and delete node. So I've got the reference. Now delete node, index. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just calling this particular function which is actually exists in app.js file, and I'm passing its reference again and again within the child component and then the grandchild component, and I'm passing this particular index. So whenever I click on this particular button, let me just save all these files. So this is the button. Whenever I'll click on this particular button, it's going to call the delete node function, which is actually going to go up, and this is the function, and this is going to go up, and this is the function that is going to be called. Right now it will not do anything because we haven't written anything inside it. Let me just click over it so you can see nothing is happening. So inside it, I'm going to remove that particular object from this array which is being stored in this nodes object. So what I'm going to do is using a filter which is provided by ES6, sorry. So inside that I'm just going to write const, and I'm going to create a new nodes. Instead, rather than creating a variable, I'm just going to use set nodes function, set nodes, and inside it I'm going to use nodes.filter, which is node and I, and if I is not equals to index. All right, so now what's being done over here is that, let me just save it and see if it is working. Let me just click over it. You can see it is being removed. Let me just reload this page, and you can see these are being shown up in the form of list. So the nodes are being deleted now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another component which is going to be a text box at the top, and we are going to add a new node under this list. So let me just go and create a new file, and I'm going to name it add node.js. Let me just copy this whole data. Oh, sorry. And I'm going to paste it over here, and I'm going to change its name. So add node. All right. So inside it, I need to create a form that is going to be containing an input text box and a button. So just remove it, and inside it, let me just use a form, and I'm going to create an input element, and it's going to be of type text, and placeholder, enter node, and its value is going to be stored within a state. So just remove it, and I'm going to use the state property. So use state. So under this function, let me just remove it, and inside it, let me just create a variable which is a value, and which is a set node. Okay, and I'm going to use the state, and I'm going to give it an empty string. All right, so now inside this input tag, let me just end it, so just to avoid the errors. And for the value, I'm going to pass the value. So now whatever we are going to write within this input text box, it is going to be stored within this value variable. All right, but now we need to actually set its value whenever we type anything in the form of string in this input text box. So for that, I need to trigger on change event, and I can directly trigger that event over here. So set value, set note actually, and I'm going to get its particular value using the e.target.value. All right, so whenever we are going to make any changes, it's going to trigger this particular variable and it's going to change its value right here. All right, so now under this input, I'm just going to use the button and I'm going to give it a style. So margin left, which is 10 pixels. And whenever I'm going to click on it, I'm going to call a function, and I'm going to call it like add node function. Okay, so on click, let me just call it add new node. Okay, so add is a text over here, so I'm going to just copy its name and I'm going to create a new function, and this function is going to be constant. So add new node. So let me just prevent default. I don't want to use the default functionality, and I'm just going to call whoever is using this particular component. So I'm going to go to app component and I'm just going to pass this add node reference to that particular add node. But before that, I need to call that particular component. So I'm going to import it over here. So add node from components, add node. So I'm just going to copy it and I'm just going to paste it above, and this is add node, and I'm just going to pass the reference of add node which I have not yet created. So add node, let me just copy its name and also save the file, and const v, and I'm going to get the value. So this is a function that is being created. So now this particular component is receiving this add node. I'm just going to copy it, go over here, and it is going to receive that variable right here. So now I can call this particular function inside this add new node. Okay, so add node, and I'm just going to pass this value. All right, let me save all the files and let me go how it looks like. So this is how it looks like, and it won't do anything because we have not written anything over here. Okay, so for adding a new node, we can actually use this particular set node function. So let's write set nodes, and I'm going to use a spread operator. Dot dot dot, and first let's get all the data that is within that nodes variable, and after that I'm going to build a new object and append it within this particular nodes array. So id, and I need to pass it an id which is greater than the this particular id. So I'm going to use nodes dot length. So right now it is 3, so length plus 1, it is going to be 4, so it's going to work. So node, which is a second property, and I'm going to give it a value that is coming from that add node. And lastly, important, let me just give it a false. So let me save it. Now refresh, and if I write anything and click on add, you can see it has been added. And keep on writing and it's going to add over here. Let me just remove it. So it's going to be removed one by one. So what I need to do now, once I click on this add button, this text box should get empty. Okay, so let me just go over here, and after we add a node, I just need to set node and pass it an empty string. So now whenever we add anything, it's going to get empty. All right, and also if I just keep on clicking, it will keep on adding. So I also need to check if the string actually contain something in order to add in the list. So what I'm gonna do now, if add an if condition, and if condition would be like if not value, then I'm just going to call return. So just click over here, it won't be added over here. Okay, so our CRUD app has been completed. One thing I want to mention over here, maybe you already know that, we can actually directly call that delete node function rather than calling a local function. Then this local function is going to be responsible for calling the delete node function of the parent component. So how we can do it? So I'm just going to copy this line, paste it over here. So within this on click, rather than actually delete node item, I can use curly braces and I can pass any kind of data, which can be E or anything, arrow function, and I can just call delete node and I can just pass index, and this delete node is going to be called, which is of the parent component. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this line, comment, and comment this particular function, so it should work as well. So this is the shortcut way of doing it. Okay, so let me just go, and if I delete anything, you can see it is getting deleted. So this is another way to actually call the parent function. So starting from over here, you can see that we are using the React hooks, and it contains this use state function. This is actually be returning two variables. The references, one is going to be containing the data, other is going to be used for make any changes to this particular data. This is a beginner level information that I've just given to you. Make sure to subscribe my channel and keep hit the like button and hit the bell icon, and I'm going to be creating some advanced level topics related to React hooks.